It's another relaxed Sunday live stream here. Hope you have a blessed Sunday. We will be talking today, going over a public letter written by Father Joachim Heimerl. He's a priest from Austria who has seemingly taken up the mantle left behind by a fair number of the better bishops who've suddenly, in the months since Cardinal Burke has been essentially sidelined, they've gone quiet. And he's taken up the mantle of writing these public letters. And he's written a letter about the state of the church in Germany, but I think it very much gives us lessons on understanding how it is that the Catholic Church in the Western world has suddenly found itself in the grips of secular ideology. So we're going to go over that letter. And then we're going to talk a little bit about a stunning thing I saw in a letter to the editor over at the National Catholic Reporter. So we'll talk about that, but first I want to give you this when you think it can't get dumber kind of update from the Vatican. It can always get dumber. So we get this from Michael Haynes, who is a reporter for LifeSite News, who posted this on Twitter. Vatican announces Pope Francis will meet with 173 leaders and their friends from World of Humor on June 14th. Holy See says event, quote, aims to establish a link between the Catholic Church and comic artists. These would be comedians. This includes Whoopi Goldberg, Stephen Colbert, and Jimmy Fallon. I don't know if any of these guys at least those two haven't been funny in a very long time. I'm only familiar with Jimmy Fallon's work from many, many years ago when he was on Saturday Night Live, many, many years ago. But those other two haven't been funny in a very long time, if ever. So this is just more less than serious movements from a very unserious Vatican, which should surprise absolutely nobody. Evelyn says, Gaffigan, she saw that video and wanted to puke. Gaffigan is a Catholic. I didn't even know that Gaffigan was there, but okay. Jim Gaffigan hasn't been, to me, funny in a long time either, because he's the kind of Catholic who is just fine with things going on the way they are in the church. But, again, that's what we're dealing with. So let's turn to Father Heimerl, because it's a Sunday, and we'll try to keep this one short. Their headline, Germany, Church Tax and Financial Wealth of a Schismatic Church. So this is published by Marco Tossati, the Italian journalist who often has stories. He gets stories that are breaking from Rome that you'll hear about a few days after he gets them. He's very good. He's very good that way. He's got a lot of deep connections. And he was one of the first to publish Vigano's letters before anybody else was. But if you're not familiar with the church tax, in Germany, you don't pay your tithe the way you do anywhere else in the world. The church, you are registered with the government as a Catholic or with whatever established religion you are, that you go to church with on Sunday. And they tax you your tithe, and then they give it to your church in question. And to get escape from that, you have to actually formally renounce your faith. It's a really evil system that they have there. And he goes over the history of this, and it tells you exactly how we got to where we are. Now, remember, the two biggest countries in the world in terms of their financial contributions to the Vatican are the United States and Germany. The lead prelates at Vatican II, who were the expert assistants who helped to undermine the Second Vatican Council, got rid of those documents that were actually Catholic that John the 23rd and Cardinal Ottaviani and a few others worked to put together, on the first day were thrown out by the council. That was done at the behest of the assistants of the Periti, the experts at Vatican II. They were all Germans, or most of them were. Okay, so understand, this is a very important thing to know where this came from. Again, his letter is pretty short, so we'll just go over it here. The Church Tax and the Total Loss of Faith by Father Joachim Heimerl. Anyone who has been baptized and confirmed and professes the faith of the Church is Catholic. In Germany, as often happens, things are completely different. You are here exclusively thanks to ecclesiastical taxes. Catholic, at least if you are a taxpayer. This tax is not voluntary at all, but rather a mandatory tax that, thanks to the big bad guy from the 1930s and 1940s, is collected by the state and paid directly to the church. Additional payments and advance payments are also mandatory. It is clear that the church tax is an imposition. Membership in the church must not depend on monetary payments. However, German practice is rigorous. If you don't want to pay, you can simply declare before the civil registry office that you are, quote, leaving the church, even if this leaving the church does not exist at all according to canon law. Once you get out, you find yourself in a bad position. In practice, one is considered excommunicated, while heretics and schismatics belong to the church, as long as they simply pay taxes. So let's say things as they are. Those who are Catholic in Germany don't have to believe anything. They just have to pay. I certainly don't want to know what Jesus Christ says about it. Wasn't he the one who drove the merchants out of the temple with a whip of ropes because they had turned the place of prayer into a den of thieves? But let's be honest. In the German church, no one is interested in Jesus Christ anymore. Here, as everywhere, one thing matters: money. And thanks to the ecclesiastical tax, incomes reach unimaginable levels. The fact that this system was able to survive is explained by the authoritarian thinking of the Germans, but also by their ignorance. Not even the German Pope Benedict XVI managed to convince his countrymen that their tax practices were profoundly contrary to the mission of the church. But above all, bishops cling to the church tax like the devil to poor souls. Bottom line, the tax system has made the German church incredibly rich, but also faithless and decadent. Let's pause here. So this church tax in Germany has made the church very rich there. And remember, the Catholic Church in Germany is the second largest contributor to the Vatican's coffers on a national bishops' conference level, right above the United States. And what makes the church in America so rich, because tithing has dwindled dramatically, is the relationship between the church and the state, where church nonprofit organizations, which are quasi-separate from the church, they usually have a bishop on their boards of directors. They receive money in the forms of contracts for doing things that the government believes needs to be done, but would be cheaper done by somebody who's not in government. Standard practice has been for a long time. Catholic Charities makes all sorts of really bad headlines these days for that practice. And then the church takes a small percentage of the contract money from the nonprofit organizations, and now you multiply this by across the United States, and it's a boatload of money. Those are how the church in the United States and Germany got rich. And then that money goes to the Vatican. Do you see how this works? And yes, that money has made the church, both in Germany and America, faithless and decadent. Hence why you see Eucharistic revival going on in the United States that is painful to watch at a lot of places. Let's continue. The synodal path, organized with a lot of money, has highlighted this in a shocking way. Now, even the majority of German bishops deny the fundamental truths of the Catholic faith, but they continue to brazenly collect church taxes from believers. How twisted this is can certainly currently be seen in the Archdiocese of Munich and Freising. Cardinal Marx has now established a synodal council, which should enforce the heretical decisions of the synodal way. These are lay people who baptize, get married, and preach mass. All this despite the Roman veto and against all ecclesial law. So under Cardinal Marx, you now have laity preaching the gospel, which is a violation of canon law. The Catholics of Munich are therefore faced with a paradox that would be more correct to call the most serious spiritual abuse. To remain Catholic, they must finance a church which is no longer itself Catholic, but at most a follower of Karl Marx. If they do not do so, they will be excommunicated by Cardinal Marx, who, as a heretic and schismatic, has long automatically incurred automatic excommunication. Such confusing conditions will no longer be sustainable in the long term, and in Germany, the disintegration of the church is now being felt everywhere. One thing is certain: the Germans will never return to the community of the church. The German schism is irreversible. What else can you do as a German Catholic in this situation? First of all, there is no hope of help from Rome. The Vatican is in the red and needs money from the German dioceses. Furthermore, Francis himself flirts with the heretical ideas of the Germans. I think he's being very charitable towards Francis there, to be honest with you. That's why he hasn't slowed down their schism. This means that German Catholics are experiencing the total failure of Catholicism on all fronts. Those who want to remain Catholic in Germany therefore have no other choice. He must make a clear decision against the heretical bishops and their ecclesiastical tax system. At the same time, this entails a courageous confession. Only those who have been baptized and confirmed and who live according to the principles of the Catholic faith are Catholic. Being a German Catholic today means becoming a lawyer against heretical bishops. You almost feel like you're in the times of the heretic Arius. I would therefore like to say to all German Catholics, do not be afraid. Free yourselves from the pressure of the church tax, from the yoke of unbelieving bishops, and from German heresy. This is the only way to remain Catholic in Germany. Or would you rather become a follower of Cardinal Marx and pay for it? Short letter, to the point. And remember, we saw something similar in the United States. This is why so many bishops remain silent in the face of the James Martin stuff, vociferously endorse the things going on in Texas right now, and condemn anybody who points out that, hey, what they're doing is actually evil down there. They're twisting the gospel for financial and government purposes. That's why you see that stuff. It's because money trumps the faith in all cases. That's why. We have a very real connection between the state and between the church. And it was inevitable that that would cause worldly values to be imposed on the church. And it's not that surprising that it was a certain evil figure from the 1930s and 40s in that country that was the one who imposed it. And it's kind of weird that the government that came after all that was done decided to keep that one on the books. Seems a little odd if you know anything about that history. Gonna check the live chat here. Yeah, Mark Becker, you're correct. I can't put that on screen, but you're correct about Catholic Charities and how the billions they've made over the last 5 years. All right, folks, let's pivot over here before we wrap this up too. I think a fascinating letter I found here. Now, you are aware that many traditional Catholics will travel long distance to go to mass. Today, my wife and my kids and I will make a 93-mile one-way trip to get to mass. I'm not telling you that to show you how virtuous I am. I'm just telling you as a statement of fact. That's seems like a fairly long distance. In Oklahoma, that's actually just considered a moderate drive, honestly. But a lot of traditional Catholics make that drive. But now there's an interesting letter to the editor that's a response to one I read to you from a couple of weeks ago, where somebody complained about how traditionalism was on the rise to the point where every normal Novus Ordo parish in their area within 25 miles or 50 miles or something was getting tratted up because they were becoming slightly reverent, and that they had to go drive a long distance to find a Vatican II style mass. Now, if you've ever read the documents on the liturgy from Vatican II, virtually no Novus Ordo parish offers a Vatican II style mass. Because a Vatican II style mass would be the traditional Latin mass with the Our Father said in the vernacular and the readings proclaimed in the vernacular, and that would be about it, if you actually read the document. But there's this argument made that the Novus Ordo that was issued in 1969, 1970 was Vatican II, was what the council wanted, but you read those documents and they're not the same in the slightest. But this is a letter by somebody complaining about something similar. And this should give you hope. And I please pray for this person, because that they come to understand what's going on. Because there does appear to be a growing sort of quiet restoration of reverence in a lot of ordinary form parishes, which will make many of you very, very happy. So this is a letter to the editor to the National Catholic Reporter. Bear in mind the outlet. Okay. Traditionalism's power felt. In a recent letter to the editor published in National Catholic Reporter, this person spoke on the topic of traditionalism, dated May 24th. He brought up a situation very similar to mine and the traditional return local parishes are taking. That person mentioned the need to drive many miles to join the celebration of the liturgy in a progressive parish, 20 miles each way. My wife and I live in rural North Carolina. We tried 4 parishes within the 25-mile range of our home. One is more traditional than the next. The Black Hats, whose name I suspect I can't say because it has a very similar name to certain kinds of implements you cannot talk about on this platform, Latin, kneeling for communion, etc. Finally, we settled on a parish and a 100-mile round trip, just to participate in what should be a standard Vatican II liturgy. We make the 100-mile journey once a month. Now brace yourselves for this. The other Sunday mornings, we break bread and share the cup in our home. Tragic, yes, but we're getting a new bishop. Maybe some change. Maybe. I'll read that part again. The other Sunday mornings, we break bread and share the cup in our home. Does that person believe in the real presence? Just from that reading. You make the argument in charity that they do, how they're doing it, because I can't see it. The traditional practice that many traditional Catholics who have come to the realization that the Novus Ordo is dangerous to their faith, because many do come to that practice, is that they will make a long drive once or twice a month, and then on other Sundays, they will stay at home. They will do the readings from a mass. If there's a traditional mass live stream, they will follow it that, but they will do the readings, and then they will keep Sunday holy in another way. The harder line traditional orders will actually say that's the thing to do. You have to make those decisions for yourself. I'm not going to condemn or endorse any of that. But that one thing you won't see is breaking the bread at home and sharing the cup at home, because the Eucharist is not a symbol. Yes, there are symbolic aspects to the Eucharist, but the Eucharist truly is the real presence of Jesus Christ. And so that's what I'm left with wondering what that person is doing. Because if you're breaking the bread and sharing the cup at home, you are essentially reducing the Mass to a meal. That's what it looks like to me. But on the upside, the kind of parish he's talking about is withering away, depending on your bishop. Note his caveat at the end. We're getting a new bishop. Hopefully things will improve. What that means in this context is they're hoping that they will get a restoration of the bad old days in their diocese, and that all these rigid priests will get crushed. But here's the thing about this. As I've told you many times before, the priests that are coming out of the seminaries now skew heavily towards, the very least, being like Benedict XVI, if not even more so traditional than that. That has caused a lot of consternation among everybody, including Jesuits. I've heard from trustworthy sources that Jesuit seminaries are also full of young, traditionally minded men. And they're not really sure what to do about it, to the point where I've covered stories here before of priests and bishops asking Rome to do something about this, quote, problem. They're fringe masses, these masses that don't even remotely look Catholic, that destroy the faiths of many, may be a thing of the past very, very soon. That is something to celebrate, because that means we may finally have the unicorn masses for you, all you who are dedicated to going to that in the Novus Ordo, may become closer to the norm than the exception, or at least something between that and the typical moderate mass we have now. And I hate to use terms like moderate to describe things in the faith, but I can't come up with better terminology. But of course, the things that really matter there are decorum about the Eucharist, how the Eucharist is handled, and what it is that your priest is preaching. And the hard one for a lot of people is noticing that in the Novus Ordo lectionary, that the readings, a lot of those don't have any of the hard readings in them. That the claim is you get more Bible readings at Mass than you do in the traditional Mass, but that's actually not true. And the readings you do get often leave a lot of the spicy or hot takes out of them, out of the Bible. It's really, really remarkable. All right, folks. I'm gonna check the live comments here before we wrap up. Let's take a look here. Evelyn says, half an hour on bus, half an hour walking to get to the church who brought me back to life. TLMS touches my soul. Wow. Half hour walking. Well, good on you. That's in bad weather, that's going to be tough, I think, for a lot of people. But I do think that that's a good practice to have. Mike says, I remember our marriage encounter debacle in 1997 when the priest in Mass told us that if Jesus was in Germany, the Last Supper would have been with beer and pretzels. Okay. Yeah, probably not. All right, folks. He says, even the most of your conservative Novus Ordo priests would appear as a bleeding heart liberal when placed next to your average priest from 1940. That is true, actually. This is why I don't like the I don't consider most of the, like, pretty conservative priests these days to be that conservative unless they're trying to actually root themselves in the pre-conciliar faith, which a lot of them are trying to do, actually. They're trying to they're reading old books too, seeing how what things were taught and trying to find a way to bring that back delicately into their masses, because the last thing you need is a priest to get up at the ambo on a Sunday and preach what would sound like fire and brimstone to most people, and then get the have the chancery office flooded with calls. Next thing you know, that priest is joining the ranks of the coalition for canceled priests. Many such cases of that happening. So it's a delicate thing. It's a very delicate thing that they have to do. Mark Becker says they changed the wording in the mass readings. They've done that too. GW says wishful thinking in his opinion. At least in my area, there is no even semi-conservative style mass. See, that's the other thing about this. Some dioceses are different than others. It's the effect of bishops who've been there, who might be outgoing, who've had what they've done, and the priests they brought in. David Wilson says, according to the spirit of Vatican II, if they're breaking the bread at home, it's only invalid if they're not wearing clown masks. Yes. All right. Are there any final thoughts on all this in the comment in the live chat, please, before we wrap this up? And hit the like button. That would be greatly helpful. But yes, we're wrapping this up. It is a Sunday, so please make sure you get to Mass. Press the like button, as Joe says, and also pray for anybody we spoke about today in these videos. They should never lead you to what I would call unrighteous anger. There's a difference between righteous anger and sinful anger. So you should always make a prayer for the people we talk about, especially if they stir up those kind of feelings in you. It's a good sort of protection for yourself, and also it's a charitable thing to do. All right, folks. Thanks very much for tuning in today, and always pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.